Hi, I'm Kat Kahn from Bay County Public Library, and I am with James.
James Finlayson,
Mhm.
owner and operator of Arena Comics and Gaming.
And we are doing something fun for the Will Eisner Week celebration for 2025.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I just wanted to talk with you a bit about Arena Comics
Okay.
and what made you decide you wanted to open a comic store?
Well, what made me decide this was about, I don't know, 17, 18 years ago when we started. I walked into the local shop I shopped at here in Panama City and was informed that they were shutting down. And I thought long and hard about it and figured that though there was another comic shop in town, that I didn't know how easy the transition of 40 or so to 50 new subscribers just showing up out of the blue would how easy that would go. And being a collector for over 30 years at that point, I decided I would give it a shot. So in January 1st of 2008 was our hard opening date. We were open a month before, but we had none of our fixtures had shown up yet, or
Gosh.
so it was kind of a shoestring operation that first month there. But yeah, it's come along pretty well.
That's great. I wanted to ask, what is the is there any significance to the name of the shop?
I literally was at a loss for what to name the store. I really was, and at that time, World War Hulk was coming out, and he had turned in the storyline. They turned Madison Square Garden into an arena, and I'm like, well, we're going to have gaming there. Why not call it Arena Comics and Gaming? So that's just basically the not so exciting origin of the name.
Well, that's still great. That's fun.
It was literally came through a lack of imagination.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now I have been a comics reader. I think I probably told you this since I was very, very young.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've been shopping in comic stores for over almost half a century.
For enough time.
Yes, for a very long time. And in various states. In Hawaii, Indiana,
Michigan. We've had discussions about your travels. Yes,
ma'am. Right. And I noticed even back in the 70s, the late 70s, that comic stores, at least the stores that I went to, they just weren't just comics. They always had a mix.
A little more, yes.
Yeah, so they might have various comics-related merchandise, board games, trading card games.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of crossover in this genre that allows for that.
Yeah, and with the economy the way it has been going for quite a while now.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you really need that mix, right?
Yeah, you need a product mix. Yeah. There may be one or two true just pure comic book stores still out there, but they've probably been in existence for they have a legacy of their existence. But I find that most shops, we do have to have kind of a broader spectrum of what we offer. Majority of what we bring in will be kind of related to the other stuff that's here. There's very rare do you venture off onto a wild tangent, and because they come in looking for one thing and find something else associated with it that's then associated with something else, and then you can get kind of a broader base of customer that way. Because I wish comic readers were more prolific than they are, but it has become a much more streamlined readership.
But you do have a lot of regulars.
Oh yeah, we have close to 200 almost regular subscribers. Now some of them may only get one book a month, but they still do show up for that one book.
Good.
We have one person who just wants I just want the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, don't want anything else, or I just want Star Trek, I don't want anything else.
But you're able to accommodate them with everything else. It's great.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in the market though with distributors and some of the upheavals we've had, but yeah, if you're on the ball, you can kind of stay on top of things.
And I noticed that you also provide, like this room,
Oh yeah,
a
the
lot
game
of
room here. Yeah.
space for gamers. And,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to offer the game product, it's not a bad idea to offer them a spot
Right.
to play it as well. So we found that having this available to players to come in and play gives them you want to be their third place, and this kind of helps encourage being their third place.
Good sense of community.
Yeah.
Here.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've got a strong Games Workshop players, both for Warhammer and Age of Sigmar and Horus Heresy. They're a very strong community, and they really do kind of welcome everybody in. We have a board game group that meets here every other Saturday, I believe. It's kind of their record, but they're very welcoming too, and whoever wants to sit down can jump right into games with them. And most of our communities have been very welcoming to new players, our returning players. There's an ebb and flow, though. As sometimes you have a lot of players showing up for a system, and then sometimes you have just a few. But it's organic. They kind of grow and shrink as they go along.
Yeah, because I've noticed that is something that we've seen in a number of stores, not just here in this town, but in a lot of places around the country.
I think that allows you to, it's just one more further service you can offer that allows some, or encourages, I guess, some more patronage, because you have the ability to come in and buy a bunch of packs of whatever card game you like, and then come right in this room, even if you're not playing it, sit down, tear them open, spread them all out, arrange them how you need to, see what you got. Yeah.
Now, I remember that when I was first starting to go into the comic stores and buying things, I was considered an oddity because I'm female. And
I thought you were just going to say because you're a cat.
There's that too. But I know that it was really funny because there was one comic store that the other customers would look at me like, "What are you doing here?"
Outsider.
And they didn't realize that I had been a lifelong comic reader. That was the first thing I read. It was not a picture book. It was comics because of my dad.
Right.
He was one of those guys who was a kid in 1939 who spent his newspaper selling money on Action Comics #1 and Detective Comics #27.
Yeah, 27.
And he's the one who got me started on reading comics. So it has been a lifelong thing for me.
Yeah.
And it took a while for some people to accept that I was one of those.
Yeah, there was for many years, I think there was kind of an involuntary gatekeeping mentality to where when people who were comic collectors prior to the late 80s, when the boom really started to get it became a trendy or in thing, you were worried about who came in and caught you there sometimes too. I don't want them to know I'm a comic book collector. So there was kind of an involuntary, I think, gatekeeping where anyone who wasn't, part of the, of the norm there was looked at as an outsider, and there was a fear of judgment coming in at them, but also a lot of judgment going out about who you were and why you were there. And I think that permeated the industry for a while, and you had a lot of shops where, unfortunately, the way they were geared up and designed, they kind of had this forced barrier to entry, to where if you weren't of the hobby, you were hesitant to want to even come in.
Yeah, I just remember, and it's again, like you said, it was in the 80s. My one of my local comic shops that was closest to the library where I was working, I actually worked with them to do summer reading program prizes.
Nice.
And I always had comics whenever I sat at the reference desk in the library.
Oh, heck yeah. Take me everywhere.
I would be surrounded by boys after school, but there was this one girl who was in middle school at the time. Now I'm sure she's probably got her own kids.
Yeah.
But her older brother worked at that comic shop, and he basically told her girls don't read comics.
Oh, heck.
Oh, she was not happy.
Who did you think they were selling romance books to, right?
Well, I was reading superheroes.
Well, no, I'm just saying though. They didn't go. Hey, let's try romance books for all these guys that are already reading comics. Not back then.
No, right. And so she started coming in, and when she saw that a woman, librarian, was
Reading
reading
comics.
comics, and she talked to me about it, and I said, "You just tell your brother."
He's out of his mind.
Yeah, anyone can read comics.
Absolutely. I'm
And
literate.
anyone
I can
read
read
whatever
them.
comics you want to read.
Yeah.
And she went back and she just gave him
All what for.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You talk about being a reader. That's literally, my mom kind of trained me to be a reader. When we were very young, if all of our friends had a bedtime of 8 o'clock, we had a bedtime of 7 o'clock. But if we went to our rooms and we read for an hour, we could stay up till 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And she didn't care what we read. So that's when I really got into comics, because I could sit alone in my room for an hour unbothered and read Superman or Captain America or any of those to just kind of keep myself. I got to get that extra hour, but at the same time, I was really learning to love reading.
Yeah, and I do remember the summer after third grade. We were going to be leaving Hawaii, but that last summer there, we were living in Japan, and I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
And a number of being on a military base. We lived in a quadrangle, so there were a lot of kids, and so almost every day, and they were almost all boys except for me, would gather in our living room, and they would all bring their comics. I would have my comics, and my brother had his, and we were just trading them around.
Absolutely.
And so I was reading The Phantom, The Spirit, Batman, Superman, all of those things. And I was the only girl, but the boys just thought, she reads comics, it's cool.
She's cool, that's right.
And so I was never made to feel that I should be left out of it.
Well, that's the funny thing. I started venturing into comic stores when I was around the age of 7 or 8, around 1975, 76, and that's when I had my own allowance money to go and actually pick out the book I wanted, And once someone else who reads comics finds out you read comics too, you're suddenly in at that age. When I was young, you were in, and you weren't afraid to talk to each other about it. Now, you wouldn't maybe speak out in front of everyone you knew, but once you recognize that this is a fellow comics guy or a fellow comics gal, whatever, once you realize that, you were very much more inclined to, when there was just the two of you, hey, let's talk about, let's, and that's it's strange how there's like this barrier that keeps you separated until you find out you're both readers, and then suddenly it's just inclusive, and you're just in there reading with each other and sharing stories and talking comics,
Yeah, there are a lot of good memories of going into back in my day in the 60s, going into the local drugstore, going to that spinner rack.
Yep. It's no longer there, but the Eckerd Drugs down there on 390 and 23rd. I visited their spinner rack a lot. Yeah.
And I would go in every week with my allowance, and I had enough to be able to buy, because back then I think comics were like 15 cents an issue. We're talking.
I started a little later. They were around 35 cents an issue when I started.
Back in my time, in the mid to late 60s, they went from 12 cents to 15 cents. So I had a quarter a week. 25 cents a week,
Look at you. That gets you two.
It got me one comic and a candy bar.
Oh yeah.
And
you have to enjoy the medium with the meal. That's right.
And I would get those big chews because they were really chewy and they would last long, and I didn't have to eat the whole candy bar at one time, so I would stretch that candy bar for a week. And I would read and reread and reread my comics until they fell apart.
Yeah, the earliest portions of my collection, which I still have, are as worn out as you could expect a comic to get without being just completely in pieces,
Yes.
But they definitely saw some readership over and over again.
Yeah, and it's just comics, like I said, has been so much a part of my life. Sounds like also yours from little kid time. That
well, I started reading. You start reading one thing, and then you see a character pop up that takes you to another thing, and as a very young reader, I was deep into the Legion of Superheroes, and I remember reading stuff in Legion of Superheroes and having to go to my mom and go, okay, how do I pronounce this word? What is this? What is this word? Because you're reading it and you're like, the first time you see chameleon and you're still just not too far into your vocabulary. You're like, how do I? What is that? So you ask someone who can, and so I was encountering words, reading those comics, loving what I was doing, that popped up years later on vocabulary tests and stuff in school. And I'm like, oh, I know that.
I can't tell you how many of my friends have said that.
Yeah.
And we had quite an advanced vocabulary simply from reading comics.
Yeah.
And that is something that studies have done and shown that comics have a much higher vocabulary than a lot of regular prose books. And
the concepts that they talk about, like, as a young reader too, not as young, I was probably teenage years when I was reading Grant Morrison's Animal Man. And, if you're really interested in the story and you start reading about their write-ups in the back on the editorial page, you get introduced to Morrison was big on playing on some of the concepts and principles of Schrodinger's cat, that whole thesis that was written. So I've read about that in the back of an Animal Man comic. I'm like, what is this? And then I'm off researching Schrodinger's cat, having never taken, the first bit of advanced sciences out of, I'm still in middle school. They're not covering. Yes. They're not covering quantum physics. And
so that was always my thing. Comics are not dumb.
No.
Comics are not stupid. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Absolutely.
And, so that was always a big thing for me. And and I don't think I ever really stopped reading. I slowed down in college, but I never stopped reading comics. That was always a part of.
I've always read comics, even when I was doing something other than this, And there were times when other things in life occupied a greater degree of my attention.
Oh yeah.
But no, I've always had them around. And I've got my favorite stories like James Robinson's Starman. I go back and reread about once every 3 or 4 years. I read that whole 80-issue run again. Gosh. I bought it in probably every collected edition it's been released in, just so I know I always have the ability to go back and read it.
Yeah, and it's just amazing what you're going to find.
And I like that comics aren't ever like there are probably some comics that have been written to kind of to cater to the fan base, but then there are a lot of comics that the way some writers write, they're just telling the story and it's organic and it takes you wherever it's going to go and it doesn't get dumbed down for you. And if you don't understand what they're writing about, you got to go figure it out somewhere, because otherwise you do start to get a little questions pop up. And the best thing to do is to answer those questions. So, but I've always enjoyed that it's never been a medium where I felt like they were writing to cater to me. They were writing for the sake of the story.
And just like my shirt says,
yes,
you exercise your whole brain, because and science studies have proved it, that the looking at the art, looking at the pictures, you're using your right side of the brain. Reading the words, you're using the left side of the brain. And so much of the story in comics are in the art.
Yeah, and you have to appreciate that art, because they don't have to write the descriptors.
Right, exactly.
They get to show it to you.
And that is something that I had always tried to bring out to people whenever they told me that reading comics is stupid.
Yeah.
And I would, no. And as a school librarian, I had to explain to a lot of parents that, no, your child is reading a lot more than just the words.
Yes.
Your child is working, using those illustrations on the page to see the whole story.
Yeah, you're eating the whole cake, not just the icing off the top.
And so that's why this has been my slogan as a librarian for many years, and I still very firmly believe that.
I since I've been open, we're coming up on, I think, year 18 now. We just finished up year 17. Only one time have I really talked to someone who was not a comics reader that came in and reading comics and said, I haven't enjoyed it. And in inquiring to them as to why they haven't enjoyed it, and they're like, well, they're such short reads. I get through them so quickly. And I'm like, well, are you exposing yourself to all of the art? Are you actually looking at the panel as you're reading? I mean, are you giving yourself the full visual effect of that eye candy they've given you of because there's more to it than just the words. There are expressions, and there are things that do occur in the background, and there's tiny little clues dropped sometimes in the background. And if you're not following all of that, you're missing. You're just eating icing. You're not eating the whole cake.
Exactly. And I know that is something that Will Eisner really worked on too with his comics. I had done a previous Eisner Week program years ago about some of the things that he did to help teach the servicemen. Those manuals.
Yeah.
He did them in comics form.
Absolutely.
During World War II.
Sequential art is a thing.
Yes. To teach them this is how you fix a truck engine. And so on. And
I mean, there's still many instruction manuals that have pictograms in them. There are still new over at the day job. There are numerous decals we make that literally have a drawing on them. They go, "This is what happens to your hands when you reach into here."
Exactly. And so that is something I always have to try to bring out. Okay, I've got a couple of more serious.
I think I've sidetracked
here. No, I've got a couple more serious. And I love this stuff. This is fun, but. There's something that just happened recently in our comics world.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts about what has been going on with Diamond Comics distributors?
Well, with Diamond Comics distributors, there's a lot to unwrap there. I think that they are dealing with some difficulties that came from what a lot of businesses that haven't kind of maintained a future focus have dealt with, and I think that kind of caught up to them in a way and has really put a disruption into the marketplace. They're not the only, but they were the easiest place for the smaller publishers to get books listed and out to companies. And they were also I've never had to avail myself of this myself, but I also know they were very understanding and could be quite generous with their terms when people were having difficulties in their shops trying to stay open. So sometimes, you wind up with a lot of money owed to you that has been backlogged for a while. But I think there were a few things that they didn't stay future focused on, and in so doing, it wound up hurting them in the long run. I personally myself hope they survive their Chapter 11 and come out of this in a manner that allows them to keep functioning, because they were a huge benefit to the direct marketplace when it first got it started. They were one of the driving forces that helped made Free Comic Book Day such a big deal. And I do think that they were and still are still can be a benefit to this industry if they're still around when they do it. But
and also when they created Diamond Book Distributors and started reaching out to the library market, I was part of that. They actually had me on contract to write reviews for their
spectacular their magazine. Yeah.
And so I got to say, yes, I was an employee for a while for them. So what's happening is very concerning to me for
I'm sure
libraries
I'm sure there's some heartstrings it's plugged on too.
Yes.
But it's one of those things where there are certain industries sometimes when you pretty much are the industries and the industry, and for many years Diamond was the industry as far as comic distribution went, at least within the United States. That you lose sight on things like, look at, for instance, phone books. Phone books were the industry when it came to finding out
Right.
who do I need to call a plumber? How do I find a plumber? I go
Yellow
to the phone
Pages.
book. Yellow Pages, absolutely. And as the internet came around, I don't feel like anyone at any of those publishers for the Yellow Pages were forward thinking enough to go, okay, we were the internet before it existed.
Yes.
We need to still be the internet after it exists. And I feel like the Yellow Pages, if they'd been smart, would have been pioneering that push toward web browsers and web, and all of that. And those kind of industries, those kind of things in certain kind of industries, when you basically are the industry, you sometimes aren't as, I think, future focused as you could be.
So I'm hoping that somehow things will work out.
I do too. I would hate to see them go away because they were more than just comics. There was a lot of other products that you can order in through them that made it a lot easier to get, because a lot of times, yes, you can go straight to the manufacturer, but I don't need a gross of this product. I just need like 6 of this product, and Diamond would break those cases and send you just what you needed, as opposed to forcing that full big purchase.
Yeah. Now something local.
Okay, local.
Okay. Hurricane Michael.
Yeah, that was an interesting time.
Yeah, 2019. It did affect a lot of this county and other areas.
Yes.
You were in a different location at that time.
Correct. Yeah.
You were in that little.
Yeah, we were at the corner unit of the shopping center.
Right. Just like a 1 block. 1.5 blocks down.
Yeah,
the road, right?
we didn't even move a full quarter mile. Yeah, from where we were to where we are.
How did that affect you as your business?
Well, uniquely enough, the storm didn't affect us as much as the aftermath of the storm. The storm itself, we lost 1 pane window and a teeny bit of product, and that was it. But it also peeled all the roof off the buildings that we were in, and when it rained later, then it was a much bigger problem to have to deal with. We had thankfully been cautioned by the contractor that the shopping center had early on to go, you may not want to have stuff in this area of your store, and we adjusted what we thought was well enough, but we missed a few things. But yeah, we survived that well enough, and I had the benefit too of being in a shopping center where they staged some of the other electrical companies out of. I believe it was one of the companies from Alabama was in the parking lot of that shopping center. So since they needed power for what they were doing, that shopping center got the power back on a lot earlier than other stuff in the area. But it was sheer luck, not like anybody's like, what we need to have power into? That comic book store right there,
I know, right? Because I know that your other local competitor, his building was so badly damaged that they ended up having to move.
Yeah, both the other shops got way worse off than we did. I don't know. I mean, that shopping center we were in was built back in the 70s. I was surprised more didn't happen to it.
Right.
But it weathered the storm much better than I thought it would.
And I know that wasn't what motivated your change of location this time, right?
No, we'd been in that shopping center for quite a long time, and prior to Hurricane Michael, that center had a lot of other stores that were bringing in shoppers, but a lot of them relocated. The large big box retailer store in there moved elsewhere. The marine supply place moved elsewhere. The gymnasium, that gym closed down as well. And what they were kind of getting into to replace it wasn't anything that was bringing in additional foot traffic that would lend itself towards us. And in talking with the realtor I engaged, they were like, no, you're at the point in your career where you need to be paying yourself. So we found a building that we could afford and qualify for, and we bought it and did a little bit of renovations, not much, changed the floor, painted the walls, moved right in, and it's been smooth sailing since. So, but yeah, we just reached a point where it seemed like it was the best thing to do. And
also, your store is a lot more visible
yeah,
to the
yeah,
street.
yeah. That
You're in that little corner there.
yeah, we were tucked in that corner, and I didn't dislike it, but it was the largest unit we could move into from where we, because we were in a much smaller unit in that same shopping center, and I needed more space. And the only other larger unit available was the one tucked in the corner there. So we were out of the way for a while, and we were up underneath that big awning where you couldn't really see us. But now we're out right on the street. People can pull right in, and the shopping center, I think, missed an opportunity after the storm to kind of bring up its appearance from when it was built in the 70s, and they just went right back to the same color scheme.
Oh, goodness, yes. Oh, my goodness, that was, but I love this new location.
Thank you. We're really happy with it.
It's pretty much on my way home from work, so it's cool,
I just drive right by. One of the things that did appeal to us about this location was that everything's kind of relatively fully developed around it, so we didn't have to worry about some of the difficulties. Like I know over at Greg's shop, they'll eventually have that flyover that they have to deal with, and I was thankful that we could find a spot that's kind of away from something like that would occur. Yeah.
It's like, there's all these things you have to look at. How many years down the road you want to be here? What is the city, or county, or state going to be doing?
Right, and having most everything kind of developed up around us already, we felt pretty comfortable that we wouldn't have a whole lot of major adjustments to have to make.
Now, I might embarrass you a little bit here.
Well, that's fine. Okay. I embarrass myself all the time.
Yes, we were already talking a little bit about it, but some years back, I edited a book for H.W. Wilson.
Okay.
Covering comics and graphic novels in libraries.
Nice.
And I remember coming into your shop, and I was very excited about my book that I was going to be doing a signing at the American Library Association conference.
Nice.
And you, working for a sign company, you made me a beautiful banner.
That's right. Yes, we did. Yeah. That's right.
And so I had this gorgeous, over 6 foot long banner with great, you took the artwork from the cover of the book, got me on there.
I completely forgot about that. Holy smokes.
I was so excited because I was the only library person to have a comic style signing banner.
Oh, that's great. That's so great.
And I was able to put it up at that library conference around my signing table. Yeah. And it was just
I hope you garnered attention with that.
Yes, I did. And the thing is, you gave it to me as a gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just thought that was just the most wonderful thing. And that's the kind of guy he is. Okay. He helped me promote my book to libraries.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted more comics in libraries.
Yeah. Well, that is something that's been my mission.
Yeah, it has.
In my career.
You have been very driven with that, yes.
Yes. Well, just, remembering my own childhood and how I learned to read, mostly with comics, looking at the comic strips in the newspaper when I was like 3 years old.
Yeah.
And of course, the pictures. And then slowly learning the words and then putting everything together. So I learned to read mostly with comics. Because kindergarten back then, you learned your ABCs and stuff, but you weren't really reading. But I was actually reading. Yeah. Because I was reading comic strips.
That's right.
And
nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I just love that when I started first grade, we were in Japan. And every Saturday, we would go as a family to the base exchange.
Okay.
And the base exchange didn't have a big spinner rack, but they had shelves.
Yeah.
And they had all their newspapers and magazines, and on the bottom shelf was comic books.
That's right. Always the bottom rack on the newsstand.
Right.
Always down the bottom.
But my dad would because I was the one who was reading, he would let me pick out one comic book every week.
Oh, nice.
But he didn't, at that time, he didn't want me reading superheroes, so I was reading Baby Lulu,
Yeah.
Baby Huey,
Baby Huey. Yeah.
Little
Little
Lulu,
Lulu. Yeah.
Nancy and Sluggo,
Lotta.
Richie Rich.
Was Lotta one of those two? Was there a Lotta character? I can't remember.
I
want to say
think
it might be in Richie Rich. There was a Lotta character.
but I was, and Casper the Friendly
Casper,
Ghost,
yeah.
and things like that. And
Hot Stuff.
Yeah, yes, Hot Stuff. Yes. I was able to ship one comic book a week, and I had to share it with my brother and sister.
Yeah.
Even though they couldn't read, they could look at the pictures.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I think my brother started learning to read that way
nice.
too. And we read those things to pieces. Because I would read and reread and reread and reread those comic books until they fell apart. As
a young reader, I lived in those comics. I was like back and forth, and the visuals were so interesting. Sometimes I would just the books I liked the covers at. I would just getting lost in that cover.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Look at all those people and all these things happening. And
and it's like most of the comic books that I was buying. On my own with my allowance, I don't have anymore because I read them to pieces.
I still have one. I have the very first comic book I ever bought with my own money. Not that I ever had, but the first one I got to pick out. Walked into it was the Sunshine grocery store, and it was on their newsstand, and it was Avengers number 147.
Oh wow!
The cover with Scarlet Witch is holding the serpent crown, and the Vision's kind of holding over her, and you've got Thor and Iron Man in the background. And you had all of the Squadron Supreme, and if you've been reading anything prior to that, like particularly having read Justice League, you're looking at them going, "That's the Justice League. They're not supposed to be in that book," And it was.
You had to get that.
But that one written by Steve Englehart, that one wrote me in and made me a comic person ever since.
That's what we do, So I just wanted to say that James and you got a great staff here.
Yeah, the ladies that work for me are spectacular. They're very knowledgeable. They're very friendly, and I am so lucky to have them.
And I just think that they really represent, for me, what is great about our comics gaming library community here, and that we all work and support each other. And I really do believe that if Will Eisner was alive today, this is what he would want to be seen.
I agree.
Comic stores, libraries, all working together and doing something for the community.
The community and the medium and the hobby that spawned from all of it.
Right. So, all of that, is something we have Dungeons and Dragons and Pokemon games in the library.
Nice.
And so that is something that we definitely bring in. I manage a pretty large adult graphic novel collection. And so we're always promoting reading of comics.
Not to say that there's only adult graphic novels.
No.
There's
we
kids,
have
much kid stuff.
We have everything from very beginning reader type comics to the middle grade. From the easy readers to the middle grade to the teens to the adult.
Well,
we have the whole age gamut.
I love that like with Penguin Random House, they have this whole program. We just brought it in where they send you the rack and a themed selection of little golden books that cater to the type of audience that comes in here, and they've already started doing very well from us because of just the parents are in with kids and they say, "Oh, look, there you go," And it's amazing to see that this has grown to such a degree that the companies that you deal with are going, here's a means of, here's one more thing you can offer that we can even cater to what it is you're doing.
So because I always say that I'm the second generation comics reader.
Okay.
My dad was the first generation.
First gen, okay. He was golden age.
He was golden age. I raised both of my sons to read and love comics, and now my grandsons.
Nice.
Now they're more into manga, but but they're reading. That's the thing. They're reading comics.
Well, that's. I think it's anime is a lot more prevalent now, and it's not, thanks to the internet, not as hard to find. Like when I was coming up, you only saw Doctor Who if you could find it on PBS late
Yeah.
at night on a Saturday, where they hadn't preempted it with something else.
Now, in Hawaii,
Yeah.
I'm 14 years old.
Right.
Back in Hawaii, I would sit in front of the TV after school working on my math homework. I hated math, but I would work on my math homework.
Because you're a reader.
But we would be watching. There was an afternoon kids program.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was called Checkers and Pogo. But they showed a lot of cartoons. But they showed the English dub versions of a couple of anime.
Oh,
Speed
nice.
Racer and Princess Knight.
Yeah, I saw quite a few times you could catch on like when I was growing up on TBS, you could see Speed Racer. Mm-hmm. But a lot of those things that were made overseas, it was very hard to find as easily as it is now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just so easy to track down anything that might suit your interests.
I was watching the original Adam Boy anime in Japan.
Yeah.
So it's all in Japanese, you know.
Yeah,
in Japan, right? And 8-Man. Those two. So I figure I'm one of the OG anime fans. because I was watching those.
I predate your existence, so therefore I'm the OG.
But you know, I'm 8 years old and watching this in Japanese. And not catching, but maybe one every few words, you know, in Japanese. But I just remember loving that animation. So, of course, when Viz started releasing the Atom Boy, the updated, I had to get that.
Oh yeah.
So that is my thing. Yes, I tell people. Yes, I'm basically a lifelong comics and anime.
I guess the biggest thing that I followed that would have come out of Japan, and it was English dubbed, was school day afternoons. Come home from school, do your homework, sit down, turn TBS on, and they had the English dubbed version of what I know is Space Giants with Goldar, Silvar, and Yam. And I think I have yet to find someone else who remembers watching that, other than my best friend who used to watch it too. But yeah, that's probably the one. And it was a very much a like an Ultraman style of show where the robots grew giant and fought the other monsters and all of that. But that was my big exposure.
My older son was a Robotech fan.
Oh, Robotech, very nice, very nice.
Yeah. So yes, we have 4 generations of comics fans in my
That's
family.
Right. That's great, though. Yeah. That's absolutely spectacular.
Well, thank you so much, James.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And I want to just say, I wish everyone who watches this a wonderful Will Eisner week, which is that first week in March, because Mr. Eisner's birthday was March 6th, I believe. So celebrate by reading a comic.
That's right.
Come into Arena Comics and buy one. Or come to the library and borrow one.
That's right.
Either way, just celebrate the comics.
You can test it out of the library, and then if you find one you like, then you can come pick up the others from here.
Exactly. So please, if you any of you who are watching this, if you are in Bay County, please come into Arena if you haven't yet and check it out.
Or go get your library card.
Or go get your library card and come into our library and just check out what we have. We have a lot of graphic novels suitable for everyone from the very, very beginning young readers all the way up to adults, and we have them in the appropriate departments. So
and the topics are not just superheroes.
No, we have all kinds. I've got literary comics. I've got things from Fantagraphics. I've got manga. I've got superhero. I've got mystery. Just about every genre you can think of has been done in a comic.
Western, horror, rom-com, all of it.
All of it. So come help celebrate Will Eisner Week by coming to either, or do both. Please do both.
Yes, do both.
Come into Arena Comics and come to Bay County Public Library.
Please do that. Read more comics.